So let's get more reaction to this and speak to Andy Mitten, who's been editor for United Stand for over a decade and doesn't miss much up there in the Northwest. Andy, thanks so much for coming on. Good news for Manchester United that at least they've got some clarity now on their supporters. Yeah, the clarity is good news, and I think it's what most fans wanted. In various polls, between 75 and 85% of Manchester United fans wanted Erik ten Hag to stay. They were conducted after the FA Cup final win. You wouldn't have had such high rates had they been conducted after the 4-0 defeat at Palace at the start of last month. But yeah, positive in the eyes of most supporters and clarity going forward, because it was taking a couple of weeks and an important part of the year, even though there's no football for any football club. They've got to be planning the squad for the next season, and it's not just Erik ten Hag. There are coaches around him who didn't know whether they would have a job beyond the end of the month. So clarity all around, and the fans are still on a buzz after the FA Cup final win because it was so unexpected, and that will hopefully linger on throughout the summer. And then Manchester United simply must improve next year. There's not a chance Erik ten Hag would keep his job if Manchester United finished 8th next season, and there was a lot of mitigation with the injuries, and I think Ineos took that into account. But I think there's quite a positive mood around Manchester United today, and yesterday it was starting to become quite anxious. I was going to say, no chance that they'll keep him if they finish 8th, as you say. Does that mean that this new contract is important, or would you hold off on offering that if you were the new ownership structure? I think there's talk of a new contract because that allays fears that the manager is going to lose his job at the first opportunity. He will know as well as anybody that Manchester United need to start winning football matches and not losing as many times as they did last season. 1 win in 6 in the Champions League, 5 defeats in December, and then slipping to 8 by the end of the season. As it transpired, United will play European football next year in the Europa League, which is probably more where the club's level is at the moment than winning the Champions League. I don't think the team's going to win the Premier League next year either, and nor does Erik ten Hag. He said that, but there needs to be a significant improvement, and if there isn't, I feel that you'd get a situation similar to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, which was November-October, similar to Jose Mourinho. He lost his job in the December, and Erik ten Hag will know that, and he knows that Ineos have looked at other managers. The Manchester United job will always be desirable to other managers. Other managers may become available in the time as well, but for the moment I think the vast majority of fans are behind Erik ten Hag doing well again, hoping that he doesn't have the injuries of last season, hoping that it's a summer of positive recruitment, and maybe moving on some of the players, some of whom have already left, who haven't been contributing enough, and then you get a bit of pre-season optimism. But his team have to start the season well, because right from the start last year, it was worrying when Wolves came to Old Trafford and played a full-strength Manchester United, and even though they lost the game, they were by far the best team. Stuff like that will see the mood slump among fans. How long a contract would you offer him then, Nolan? I think if he's doing a good job, then he carries on staying and does a good job. I wouldn't obsess about whether he signs a new contract or not. I think there's more pressing matters than him signing a new contract, and that is getting United winning football matches again, and what's realistic for next year, it's probably top 4. No one will complain about another cup win, and Erik ten Hag's delivered 2 cups. Manchester United have gone 6 years before a cup in 23, another cup in 24, more of the same. Keep bringing the young players through. He's done really well with Alessandro Garnacho, with Kobbie Mainoo. He is a resilient person. I think he's an honest person. I think he's trusted by the people who he works with. Of course, there's issues. I'm not going to pretend that the mood within that dressing room is as high as it could be, but that comes with the team struggling, and as the team wins, and it's all about wins, everything else is secondary, then people can start talking more seriously about another contract. Jose Mourinho signed his in January 18th. By the end of the year, he was out of a job, so I just wouldn't read too much into it. And I think that Erik knows there's always going to be pressure around managing a club like Manchester United, and if he's doing well, if he's hitting the targets, he'll get offered another contract, because there's not that much appetite to continue changing the manager. Fans have been sick of it, and also from a financial perspective, just getting rid of him given the constraints with financial fair play rules that was an issue for Manchester United as well. And there's of course this new structure in place next season, Andy, so is ten Hag's life going to be easier? Do you feel he'll have more stability around him? So that was one of the big mitigating circumstances as well, I suppose, all the change behind the scenes. Well, that didn't help him last year, and a year ago we didn't know whether it was going to be Ineos or a Qatari-led bid, and that didn't help, and he's had lots of left-field things to deal with, which was certainly not his making, from dealing with player issues such as Mason Greenwood, and then the strategic review. Hopefully that has all passed now. Hopefully his injuries will not be as severe as they have been. Hopefully there will be a better football structure at Manchester United. But this is an idealized version. This is what fans hope. So every time there's somebody loses the job, fans are like, okay, out with the old, in with the new, everything's going to be great. Doesn't necessarily work like that either. Ineos talks about best-in-class appointments, great, bring them on and let them show that they're the best in class, but there's been complications there. Omar Barada starts working amongst time. Dan Ashworth, we don't know when he's going to start work at Manchester United, so it's been complicated to this point, and there's been a lot of change at the club. I've been covering Manchester United for 35 years since I was a kid, and I have never seen so many changes at a club where there's always changes. That's been the constant. As this year you're talking, I think 7 of the 9 senior management positions have changed within the last couple of months, and some of them people were very good at the jobs, and the new people have got to come in and be even better at the jobs, and I hope they succeed. I hope everything's absolutely fine at Manchester United, but history has taught me to be slightly circumspect. Andy, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a good summer ahead of next season. Thank you. His agent and his father is quite clear. The intention is to leave now, so let's see what's going to happen. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. 1 Hour Sports here, as always, to keep you posted on the transfer market. Today, fellas, we touch on Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, big story around the Georgian winger, but also something to say on Xavi Simons, Livy Cowell, Manchester United, the meetings, what happened with Erik ten Hag, finally spoke in public, and also something else on Chelsea. Let's jump into it together. And so, guys, big things happening, as always, on the market. While at Euros, many things are happening on the pitch, off the pitch, for the market, many things, as always. Because the agent and the father of Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, both of them, in the same interview in Georgia to Sport Imedi, just announced that the plan they have, and both of them, remember this part, say that they are still waiting to talk to Khvicha Kvaratskhelia. So, this is a statement of the father and of the agent. But both said, still waiting to speak to the player, but they said, we want to leave Napoli. The plan is to leave Napoli. The agent of Kvaratskhelia mentioned that the decision is expected to be made after the end of the Euros. He said, after the Euros, we will discuss with the player. Now full focus on the Euros, but we want to leave Napoli. The idea is to leave Napoli. And then, the father of the player, also speaking to the same media, in the same moment, he said, it's going to be a Khvicha decision, but my feeling is that it's uncomfortable to stay at Napoli. Both of them mentioned the Champions League, the intention to go and play Champions League football next season. The agent of the player also mentioned that maybe staying at Napoli one more season would mean to lose one season in Champions League football. So, he said, I'm sure Napoli will be ambitious now with Antonio Conte as a manager, but we would still lose 1 year of Champions League football if we stay at Napoli. So, strong statement from the agent and the father of the player, waiting for the player to say his position in public, because at the moment, Kvaratskhelia has not spoken to any media, has not published anything on his social media accounts while I'm talking. So let's see the reaction of the player. But meanwhile, the agent and the father go very strong on this story. What's the situation behind the scenes? So, guys, let me say that on Kvaratskhelia, what I'm hearing is that Paris Saint-Germain have always been in the recent weeks and months the strongest team in terms of showing interest. Paris Saint-Germain informed Napoli about their interest already weeks ago. Paris Saint-Germain had more than one contact with the agent of Kvaratskhelia. So Paris Saint-Germain are looking for a player in that position, a winger, and Kvaratskhelia is one of the players they have in their list. He's not the only one, but for sure he's one of the names they have on their shortlist. And for Paris Saint-Germain, the position is very clear. The interest is there, but it's important, obviously, to understand what Napoli want to do. And in the last month, the position of Napoli has always been super strong, especially coming from the president himself, Aurelio De Laurentiis, who always told the agents of the player that his intention was to keep Kvaratskhelia, and then he offered a new contract. There is already a new contract proposal ready from Napoli for Kvaratskhelia. It's an important contract, an important salary, the possibility to include a release clause into his contract, to maybe leave next summer 25 or in summer 26, so giving him an exit for the future. But at the moment, the position of Kvaratskhelia, via his agent and his father, is quite clear. The intention is to leave now. So let's see what's going to happen with also now a strong manager like Antonio Conte involved in the situation. Let's see what Napoli will say, what the president De Laurentiis will decide to do. The contract proposal is right there, but it's also important to mention how now the player is the crucial part of the story because Napoli have this contract ready. Napoli would make an important contract proposal to Kvaratskhelia, but now for the player, after the Euros, it's going to be time to make a decision. Paris Saint-Germain are still interested. Paris Saint-Germain know that the situation around Khvicha is depending on the player. And let me say that in the last year, there was also interest from Premier League clubs. So Paris Saint-Germain for sure the strongest, especially in the last 5-6 weeks, but also interest from Premier League because several Premier League clubs have sent their scouts to follow Kvaratskhelia this year at Napoli, and also last year when he did a fantastic win in the Scudetto. For example, Chelsea have been in attendance many times for Kvaratskhelia, but they are mentioning Champions League. So let's see what's the point about that one, because obviously Chelsea this season are not playing Champions League football. Let's see if some other club could enter the story, because I'm hearing also other Premier League clubs are keeping close eye to the situation of Kvaratskhelia. But at the moment, what's important to say is that Paris Saint-Germain for sure have his name on their shortlist. Meanwhile, guys, we also saw finally Erik ten Hag speaking in public after the confirmation of him staying as Manchester United manager next season. He spoke to Nos Verbal Studio speaking in the Dutch media as a pundit for the Euros, and he confirmed that he's in negotiations with Manchester United over new contracts, something we already told you here on the channel for many days. So talks ongoing between Ten Hag and Manchester United over a new deal. He said we still have few details to clarify, so it's not done yet exactly what we told you here on the channel, but also Erik ten Hag said Ineos needed some time to decide on the manager. They are new into football, so they wanted to take their time before deciding on the manager. But he also added they informed me about the meeting with other candidates, especially with Thomas Tuchel. So basically confirming that Thomas Tuchel had a meeting with Ineos. Thomas Tuchel was the closest to getting the job. Then Tuchel on his side and Man Utd on their side decided not to proceed in talks. And so Erik ten Hag said at the end of the story, they felt that they already had the best manager possible already at the club. And so they decided to confirm Erik ten Hag, but it was mentioned in the meeting. So Erik ten Hag was perfectly aware of these secret meetings taking place at Manchester United. This was part of the review for Ineos, so always checking all the options, checking all the possibilities. And then at the end of the story, making the best decision for what they believe is the best decision, keeping Erik ten Hag at the club and offering him a new contract now. So ten Hag aware of these secret stories behind him. Let's see what's going to happen also, guys, with Xavi Simons, because it's not something that's going to be clarified now during the Euros. The player wants to be focused on the Euros, but after the Euros, Xavi Simons will decide on his future. And let me repeat what I'm telling you in secret. This is the position, this is the situation. Xavi Simons is expected to leave Paris Saint-Germain. Yes, I'm still expecting him to leave because now there is still a chance for him to stay. But the expectation is for Xavi Simons to leave and to leave on loan for PSG, not to sell the player, but to let him go on loan. Bayern are still pushing with the director Max Eberl, who is the man who signed Xavi Simons for Leipzig 1 year ago. But also Leipzig are still pushing to keep the player at the club, even if Eberl is no longer at the club. Leipzig are still pushing to have Xavi Simons for one more season with Benjamin Sesko, with an ambitious project. So Leipzig and Bayern really pushing, but let's see if some other club will go to Paris Saint-Germain and try to sign Xavi Simons on loan deal, because PSG are not selling him this summer. So for Xavi Simons, decision time expected after the Euros. Important decisions to be made for Chelsea this week. One of them is going to be also on the striker John Duran. There are negotiations still ongoing between Chelsea and Aston Villa. And then we get a lot of questions on Levi Colwill and Chelsea, with many links for the English centre-back. The position of Chelsea, guys, remains very clear. They believe that Levi Colwill is untouchable, and he's a crucial player. He's staying at the club. This is the position of Chelsea. Then, if anything has to happen, it has to be from Levi Colwill to tell the club that he wants to go. But at the moment, Chelsea don't have any message from the player. Fully focused together on this project and believing that Levi Colwill is a crucial player for the future project they have in mind. And so, guys, let me know your thoughts on all these stories. Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, a big story. Which club should go for him? Or should he stay at Napoli? Let me know your opinion here in the comments. But also all the rest, with Man United and the Ineos negotiations ongoing over new contracts. But also John Duran, Levi Colwill, Xavi Simons. I wait for your opinion, guys, here in the comments. Like this video. It seems the priority position this summer for Manchester United, among other positions, is central defence. Now, we do know that they've made a bid for the Everton defender Jarrad Branthwaite. We think that bid was in the region of around PS40 million. And it, of course, was rejected by Everton. They value him at around PS70 million. United are now discussing internally whether they're going to go back in for Jarrad Branthwaite, but I'm told that if Everton don't bring down their asking price and United are going to move on to other targets. It's kind of a different way to approach their transfer policy compared to previous years now that Ineos have come in. They don't want to get drawn into long sagas that last throughout the summer. They have clear ideas about how much a player is valued, and if that doesn't match with the selling club, then they are willing to turn their back on a particular signing and move on to other targets. Those are the targets that I mentioned and will be mentioning this week on 1 Hour Sports. Crystal Palace's Mark Guéhi, who's obviously with the England squad at the moment, Lille's Lenny Yoro, and significantly maybe Nice's Jean-Claire Todibo. Of course, Ineos ownership at Nice and of course part ownership at Manchester United as well. They have been long-term admirers of Thibault have Manchester United. And the other reason why you look at the central defensive issues for Manchester United, that's so many injuries there last season. I think there was up to 15 different centre-back partnerships throughout the season. Add to that, Raphael Varane will leave the club upon the expiration of his contract this summer, so they will need to fill that gap. Victor Lindelof is into the final year of his contract, and when a player enters the final year, it's usually sell or renew time. So they will have to make a decision with regard to Victor Lindelof. Johnny Evans, who had that short-term one-year contract last season, his contract is up, but Manchester United are continuing talks with Johnny Evans about potentially doing another one-year deal at Old Trafford. Okay, lots of speculation about Jadon Sancho's future. What is the latest? What do we know? It's possible he's played his last game for Manchester United because we understand that Manchester United are listening to offers for Jadon Sancho. Remember, they bought him for £73 million from Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund, of course, had him on loan last season, and they remain in talks with Manchester United over a permanent deal. Juventus have also approached Manchester United. They're two of a number of clubs in Germany and Italy who are interested in Sancho. We understand that United's valuation of Jadon Sancho is around £40 million, so it would represent a big loss. But having said that, clubs like Dortmund and Juventus might still find it difficult to even afford the £40 million that Manchester United may be quoting clubs for his services on a permanent deal. Look, we do know he was on loan, as I mentioned before, at Dortmund, but we think this summer United will probably only consider permanent deals for Jadon Sancho. It looks like they want to just start on a clean footing and a clean slate, so they've decided Jadon Sancho probably isn't going to be part of United's future. Let's sort that out in this summer, and if that deal can come to fruition, be it at Dortmund, Juventus or another club, United are looking at that position with other targets. Crystal Palace's Michael Olise. There seems to be a release clause, and depending on which report you believe, it differs what that release clause is, but Manchester United definitely interested, and internally they are discussing whether they're going to make that interest more formal. And another player that they're looking at is PSG's Xavi Simons. So there's another one to look out for, but it could depend on how much money and if and when Jadon Sancho wants to leave. Okay, yeah, lots of ifs and whens, but what else might we see United do this summer? Where else will they be strengthening? I think they're looking at the whole squad, but in particular the forward position, because if you remember last summer, they went into the season with Anthony Martial and Rasmus Højlund. Now, Anthony Martial was injured for the majority of the season. Rasmus Højlund was then expected to shoulder the goal-scoring responsibility for Manchester United, came from Serie A, didn't play that many games for Atalanta, and was expected just to hit the ground running. So if there's a time in the season when he's not hitting form or he needs a rest, then maybe they can bring somebody in. Bologna's Joshua Zirkzee is a player that they're looking at. He's one of a number of strikers that Manchester United are looking at, but he is a popular guy as well, because there are a number of clubs in Europe who are looking at Zirkzee well. Another position potentially to keep an eye on, it doesn't look like it's emergent at the moment, but is the right-back area. Now, we do know that Diogo Dalot and Aaron Wan-Bissaka are at Manchester United. However, Wan-Bissaka has entered the final year of his contract, and as I mentioned with Lindelof, you get to that position of sell or renew. Now, if United were to get a good offer for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I'm told that they would probably consider it. And if they were to sell him, then they would have to go into the market in that area as well. So it looks like it's going to be a really busy summer, both ins and outs. The story goes on. Here are the fixtures for Group F, and there might be an advantage which will come to on being in Group F. We start though June the 18th, Turkey, Georgia and Portugal, Czech Republic, and one footballer stands out in this group obviously. I guess so, although I think one of the key points of Roberto Martinez's Portugal tenure so far is that the Cristiano Ronaldo question is not just suffocating everything else that Portugal do. It's clear that he's very nice to have still scoring goals in the Saudi Pro League, of course. They will use him. He won't start all the games, I don't think, and this team is no longer Cristiano Ronaldo's team. It's probably Bruno Fernandes' team. But they've got quality all over the pitch, and it's interesting to hear Martinez talk recently about, yes, Ronaldo and Pepe are in the squad, but you need that experience in the dressing room. So no guarantees for them in terms of them being starters. You look at a centre-back partnership that might be made up of Ruben Diaz and Antonio Silva of Benfica or Goncalo Inacio of Sporting. They've got quality all over the pitch. They've got a much better goalkeeper now in Diogo Costa, and a little bit like France. A few of the things that they did in not quite getting there in World Cup 2022 have left them in a much better position for this tournament. They start against the Czech Republic. We know Tomáš Souček very well. Who else should we look out for in the Czechs? Well, Patrik Schick did really well at the last Euros. Scotland will remember. Yeah, absolutely, and he's had a really interesting season because he started the campaign injured, so missed a big chunk of it. Victor Boniface was scoring lots of goals for Leverkusen in his absence, but then he came back. Schick started scoring goals in cup competitions, Boniface got injured, and then Schick came back in. He's got that sharpness, he's got some goals behind him. He's been part of this incredible Bayer Leverkusen season, so he should have that nice little sweet spot between not being overplayed, but not being completely rusty. So he's the key man for them, really. In the opening game, Turkey we're used to seeing in these stages, Georgia we're not. Yeah, and of course there'll be a lot of pressure at home on Turkey because it's a football-mad nation. They've got a really good coach in Vincenzo Montella, who's not an overseas coach. He's just been parachuted into a random job. He managed in the Turkish Super League before. He did pretty well. He handled some big personalities like Mario Balotelli, of course, while he was there. And the thing about Montella, a bit like when Sven-Göran Eriksson first arrived with England, he's at games all the time. He's building relationships with the clubs, with the coaches, with the players, and that's absolutely invaluable because Şenol Güneş, who's such an experienced coach and has won the Super League a couple of times with Besiktas, but he didn't really show that leadership when we go back to the last Euros, and that was a huge problem for them because they look really disorganized. In terms of the raw talent that they've got, I'm not massively convinced this time, even though Hakan Çalhanoğlu has had an absolutely sensational season with Inter and he'll be a big power for them. I just wonder who's going to score the goals on them because a lot really lands on the shoulders of Kenan Yıldız, the teenager who looked good for Juventus, but he's still a teenager. And they will have lots of support because lots of Turkish heritage people in Germany. Georgia have one standout star, but not only one man who can play. Yet Khvicha Kvaratskhelia is the key to the whole thing. Kvaradona, as he was called in Naples when he helped them win the Scudetto, and he plays a slightly different role. He plays that more central role for Georgia than he would do for Napoli, but he has a player in great form in front of him, in George Mikotadze, who has been scoring goals for Metz after it didn't quite work out at Ajax initially, and so they do have players that can do some damage, and I think it's going to be about that supporting cast playing their roles as they did against Greece in that playoff, because that was a real slog. They had to really dig deep to do it, but the goalkeeper Mamardashvili has been brilliant for Valencia for a long time now, so you need a good goalkeeper. They've got some of the raw ingredients, but it's a big test. I think that's the interesting thing. There are not many well-kept secrets in European football nowadays, but as you say, Nolan, a lot of people will be a little bit blindsided by Georgia. And if you're looking at players who might get big moves off the back of this tournament, I think Georgia's Mikotadze and Mamardashvili are two really good candidates. Thank you for your time and see you in Germany. Thank you for your time and see you in Germany.